everything that I witnessed in the last 20 laps of that race, other than Ryan Blaney, was a disgrace.
Yeah. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, your outfit, tremendous jacket there.
I need to clean up that.
No comment on his jacket. Okay.
What's that?
I said that's a tremendous jacket.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's cool. I don't know where'd you
Billy
get it,
Reed.
man? Billy Reed.
Oh. This is like a clothing item that makes me feel old because I've had this jacket for longer than 10 years.
I have stuff. I was just going to my closet last night.
That's old man closet stuff.
Yep, and I have stuff that like Shannon's like, you've had that before since we started dating. I was like,
yeah, that's old man closet stuff.
Yep. I was like, oh, nothing makes you feel older in your closet. Jeez.
I'm gonna have to excuse I haven't gotten sick yet, but it's there. It's there.
Right, the precipice.
You can hear it.
I can hear it. You know what it might be? What I've had the last couple of weeks is like a sinus infection that just won't go away. I've had this. And I get like this. When I get done with races, I thought there was like something in my helmet or my air conditioner because I would get done with races. And then the next day I have like a runny nose and I cannot stop sneezing and my eyes are watering. And it turns out it's possibly like a sinus infection. So,
yeah.
Pretty brutal.
The more old man stuff, mine started Monday because, of course it rained all day Monday. So the changing pressure and changing weather, I woke up and had a headache all morning and was sniffly and it was like, oh, the rain. And it just hasn't gone away. So anyways, have we done an intro? Are we recording a podcast?
We're just going. Yeah. So, hey, welcome to Money Lap show. I'm Parker Kligerman, joined as always by Landon Cassill, who's in Iowa. I'm in Connecticut, going to head to Phoenix later today. On today's show, we've got some great questions and comments from last week about our license system, Landon. So we should dive into that a little bit. We also obviously talked the Cup Series controversy from this past weekend at Martinsville. We're going to rank the 4 contenders for the championship. We've got my last full-time race coming up here at Phoenix, which is a good time. We've been on a good of a roll. We've got some Truck Series controversy. And unlike this show, Verstappen had an absolute masterclass in the wet at Brazil. You know, that is the mark of what makes a great F1 driver and a great racing show is how well you perform when it's wet. That's going to be clipped. Somebody's going to clip that.
That one, I know exactly what Instagram account that's going on.
I'm pretty sure we all know where that one's headed.
We all know where that one's going.
And that account
and you look dead in the camera for it.
I did,
as a good boy should.
Oh, yeah. You know, if you're going to lean in, lean all the way. I mentioned I raced at Martinsville this past weekend, finished 8th. Probably my favorite Martinsville race of all time, Landon, because we started dead last in the field because we had brake issues in qualifying and practice. But I don't think we ever got passed. We literally just passed cars all day and finished out right at 8th.
You needed a longer race.
We need a longer race. I was about to be passed in the last lap by Jeb Burton because I killed the right rear tire pretty hard in the last run, just going for it. But I think we got a little too loose. We adjusted loose and it just got really loose. But overall, like Martinsville's been one of my worst tracks, and I continued to work very hard on it. Even did sim on Thursday at my own volition, and just worked on some things, and it just clicked. And it was my favorite Martinsville. So don't know if I ever have to race there again. I know you love that place, but it has not been kind to me. I've got a lot of good finishes. I just never felt like I knew how to create speed, and this was the first time I really did. So I enjoyed it. I hit every car on the way through the field, every single one. Did not care. So that was fun. Gotten some definite bumper tagging. Josh Williams tried to wreck me about 32 times, which was interesting. But overall, it was still one of my favorites for Martinsville. One other thing. There is most popular driver voting occurring now for all the NASCAR series. If you like this show, you like me, you like Landon, give me a vote. Maybe I can get in the top 5 and I can tell my mom I made it to the top 5 for once, which would be nice. I'm about to launch a campaign here where I'm basically asking for your sympathy vote. So if you feel like you have a sympathy vote out there, send it my way. We're not above it. We talk about the reviews. Let's do Apple first. So this one says 5 stars. Love the show, but I always have questions after. This is from Corona Glenn 2. So today you mentioned high frequency bumps due to something put down on the track for the Xfinity race. But sometimes please explain things like this and other terms that make sense to you all, but not listeners, Glenn. Hey, Glenn, great question. So high-frequency bumps, when we were talking about Homestead-Miami, was the idea of like bumps that are in quick succession that almost create like a high-frequency vibration through the car. At Homestead, it was actually sealer that they put down in patches across the top of the racetrack in turn 3 and 4, which creates those high-frequency bumps. So imagine like a rumble strip on the side of the highway. That would be considered high-frequency bumps, but of different and varying sizes. So that creates an effect in the car that can reduce grip because the tire's bouncing around, the car's bouncing around, that sort of thing. So you have to have shocks that can handle it. You want to do one of the Spotify ones?
You know what's funny about that? I'm with him. I don't really understand. I understand what high-frequency bumps are, but I don't understand how the sealer that they put down affected that. Or
because
what it did.
they did it in strips, like little strips. So like but a lot of them. So you would hit them, and then you would hit another one, and another one, another one, another one, and it creates like that bouncing effect. If that makes sense.
Is that similar to like when they put the asphalt into like cracks on the concrete
Yes.
on a road? Yes. Okay.
Same thing. Well done. So that's a high frequency bump. Why don't you do one of these Spotify ones?
Stony Grizz 95 says, "Hey guys, love the show. How has you forgetting to bring Kyle into the show not become a meme yet? Hopefully this reminds you to get him in there. Keep up the great work." I don't really know. I don't know why that hasn't gone viral yet at all. But he's here. He's waiting.
No,
Hopefully
he's
we
waiting.
have time.
Yeah.
We did kind of have a late start.
We did have a
because of
late
me
start.
today. So,
that's
but
gonna
he
be an
is.
issue.
We do have him
Jesus.
slated to go into one of the later segments today. So we will absolutely we will get Kyle on the show today.
Yeah, no.
I'm optimistic.
He's here. He's waiting. We just, we can't do it early. We got to get through all this important stuff. So it's just, like any great program out there, news program, we've got to stick to our format. So, Jay Bush, I don't know how to say this word, his name. I understand where you're coming from with the licensing system, but I don't think it would work very well because it would unfairly favor better funded drivers. Finishing top 5 in a JGR Xfinity car is not the same as finishing top 5 in a JD Motorsports car. If that system existed when you two were coming up, would either of you even have qualified for a cup license under those rules? No shade, you're both great drivers, but your equipment was rarely the best in the field. He's referencing our idea of a true licensing system that for NASCAR that you have to gather, some form of finishes or whatever in Xfinity or trucks to be eligible for a cup license. Your idea was like, hey, maybe you got to finish top 5 10 times in Xfinity before you can be eligible for a cup license. It's a good question. I think we were just kind of shooting out ideas. The premise comes from a little bit of F1 with their super license system where every series below F1 has a weight of points that you can gather from finishing where you finish in the championship. So, F2 gives you the most for winning the championship. I think it's like 40 points, which basically guarantees you a super license, eligible for a super license. But like IndyCar actually doesn't rate as high as F2, which is a whole controversy if you remember back to Colton Herta, that sort of thing. I think for his question there, I think that's the point, is trying to find something that would maybe be a little bit more equipment agnostic, which means basically not so dependent on equipment and more about experience or success over some period of time, something like that. But also stringent, to give true value to running the Xfinity Series, you've got to make it that you have to commit to running in a series in some respect. So I think they can go both ways. I thought we were going to maybe explore this more. Maybe we save that for the off season here as we get past Phoenix and we do an episode like breaking down a true, like we'll come up with a whiteboard, a license system out there.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fun concept.
I do. I think that it's a really good question that he made and a really good point, and I've had those same thoughts myself. And I will say that I think that you still have to weight it on performance, just pure, not agnostic to equipment. Like, I don't care about equipment. Did you win or not? Right? Because if you make it too sort of equipment weighted and car weighted, then winning doesn't matter, right? Like winning rate, like being a top performer in the series doesn't matter, right? So You can get your license just by running 25th in the Xfinity Series, and you were never on TV, and you didn't, build a brand, you were just there, but you got an attaboy for running good in mid-level equipment, and you get a cup license. So not that that's a bad thing, but I think that I think you could control it with starts. It's just where I would start with it. If we were, I know we're not going to full-on whiteboard this right now, but I would control it with starts and say, hey, if in order to get a cup license with less than 50 Xfinity starts, then you have to have a certain number of wins, and a certain number of top fives, a certain number of top tens, right? And a certain number of clean races, no DNFs or whatever. If you have 200 Xfinity starts, then maybe it's a lot easier to get into the Cup Series with still only 2 wins or 0 wins or, 5 top fives or 10 top tens. Because obviously if you spend an entire career, if you're not a well-funded driver like myself, you spend your entire career in a JD Motorsports car, but you overperform in those cars, law of averages, you are going to have some top fives and top tens, right? So
yep.
It would have some kind of weighting like that, where time in the series would work.
I get it, and I think there's other ways. Even I love David Smith's production equal rated equipment, which was that whole idea of like removing equipment from the production of the driver. That's probably a little too hard. I do think it has to probably have some results based in it, as you put it. It's like you've got to sort of put that in because it's part of building the brand and why you'd be not only performance-wise eligible for a cup license, but like what are you bringing? I think it's a fun discussion.
The last point I'll make on this, and I'm kind of reiterating a point I made earlier, is like I spent my whole career in those mid-level teams, right? So I'm as empathetic as anybody to them, and a lot of my fan base, loved me for what I did in those cars, and there's a lot of great story and uniqueness to it. But we can't forget that this is a competitive sport, right? And competition should be rewarded.
Yep.
And so, at the end of the day, that should be the highest weighting for whatever kind of weighted averages we would use for something like this. The highest weighting should still be results. How'd you finish?
Yeah.
Did you win or not?
I like it. Let's dive into it in the offseason. I think it'll be fun. Brian D here says, hey guys, I really like this show, not a podcast, thank you. And the foolish chemistry you have together makes this show, not a podcast, a must listen every week. Keep it up, and I look forward to hearing more from this awesome show. I don't know what he's talking about. What chemistry? I don't have any
foolish chemistry. That is just that's cute.
Shenanigans. We also had an email. This one's from Chad. Although I love the show, this is for Parker. I remember watching a cup race as they went to Parker to share his upcoming full-time Xfinity run, not really knowing of Parker besides what I saw as a pit reporter. I was very excited. Doing a great job on pit road and seemed like a cool dude. Being able to watch more weekend races, I got to follow Xfinity racing more. Then along with the Money Lap show, I got to respect both Parker and Landon. It's so awesome to see Parker get a top 10 in almost every race. Sadly, I may not be able to get tickets to the Phoenix races, but will definitely be cheering loudly as Parker closes this chapter and starts anew. Cheers to a hell of a racing career so far. I'll be cheering you on wherever and whatever you do next. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it. We did have a voicemail. We're not going to play it because it was quite long, but it was a great voicemail from Nathan. It was about the Martinsville shenanigans, which we will dive into later. So thank you for reaching out. We appreciate that. Also, one thing off of last week, Landon.
Yeah.
Our whole discussion on driver weight didn't quite have the viral effect I thought it would, but we're going to keep down this path because there was actually an interesting story from sportscar365.com about a WEC hypercar driver for Ferrari named James Collado, who I've actually met many times doing the Rolex 24. Interesting, cool dude, hell of a driver. Never holds back in what he says, by the way. The guy's a really interesting personality. He revealed that he actually had a hospital scare earlier this year because he's trying to cut so much weight. He's not a big guy, by the way. He's got to be 5'8", maybe, and maybe 165 pounds. But because the weight is so important, he basically has been trying to get rid of it. He's not even able to qualify the cars at any of their races because his weight and where it's placed on his body lowers the capability of the car by almost half a second per lap, and he said it's 1.5 seconds at Le Mans. So, because they don't incorporate driver weight into it. So
how much
he's
does
been
this
begging,
guy weigh?
I think it's like 165 pounds, 170.
What, and all the other drivers are that much lighter?
They're that much lighter and smaller. Yeah. So
That is
like
insane.
and Alessandro Pierguidi, he's like tiny, 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 tiny. So it's pretty wild. I think this topic, though, this is going to continue to be a topic in motorsports as a whole because of the cars being so
Well,
close.
that's an
and the rules.
entirely different. It's the same topic, but it's just a
Yeah.
whole other version of that topic. If the driver weight is not even considered.
Exactly. He's asking for them to change it. So
I didn't realize that. Yeah, he should be. It's unhealthy.
Yeah. It's unhealthy. It's stupid at that point, right? Because he's obviously trying to go to extreme lengths to lose weight to perform at a high level
Right.
and something that could easily be fixed with just ballast
Right.
and a rule change.
Speaking of extreme lengths, you know who has gone through extreme lengths to provide to us the best, most high quality diecast and apparel? That is
No way.
SpoilerDiecast.com.
Wow.
They're one of the fastest growing companies in the industry. What sets them apart is their inventory. They've got over 1,100 products in stock. It's been growing. Last year it was 800 products in stock. They had us update it to 1,100. We probably need to update it again. SpoilerDiecast.com boasts one of the largest inventories in the industry. They're NASCAR focused. They have exceptional service. Their orders ship either same or next day. You get your hands on your favorite products in no time. The best part, they got free shipping on orders over $20. That's right. Smooth and easy experience. And they are healthy. As opposed to these poor drivers in Europe who are trying to cut too much weight for the speed of their cars. SpoilerDiecast.com is a healthy provider of diecast and apparel. Like I said, they're NASCAR focused, but they also have a little bit of dirt, sprint cars, IndyCar, F1. They're passionate race fans just like us. They're constantly growing their offerings. So check them out, SpoilerDiecast.com. Speaking of driver weight and kind of meshing all this together, I'm pretty sure the Chili Bolt does not have driver weight considered in the weight of their cars. I think that's been an argument. I feel like I've heard that is why one of the reasons why people believe Rico Abreu runs so well at the Chili Bowl specifically.
Wow.
Because he's smaller and weighs less. I don't know.
Driver weight. It's the hidden topic in all of motorsports. It will continue to be. Let's talk the Cup Series. Ryan Blaney this past weekend at Martinsville. I should mention we are recording this Thursday morning, November 7th, because we have all sorts of scheduling conflicts this week. So we apologize being late. We don't want to rehash too much because it's obviously Thursday now. We're headed into Phoenix. But just if for whatever reason you didn't watch and you listen to this podcast, Ryan Blaney put on a masterclass in the last stage of the race to drive through the field and honestly do exactly what he did last year, which was just be faster than everyone on the long run at Martinsville. He was aggressive coming through the field, knocked into Kyle Larson and that sort of thing, but it didn't stop his drive. He got all the way to the lead and won the race, going on to race and defend his title in the NASCAR Cup Series. I thought that was pretty amazing. Unfortunately, his drive, which was incredible, has been entirely overlooked by all the things that happened behind him.
Entirely overlooked,
which is unfortunate because if we want to celebrate excellence, which we like to do on this podcast, he was excellent on a day he needed to be. At the moment he had to be, he rose up and just had more speed than everyone. And I saw some of the charts that showed his speed was tenths better than the rest of the field. Equal tires to him.
2 weeks in a row. That's 2 races in a row with absolute showstopper of finishes.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
And I think it bodes well for his momentum going to fight for a championship. Let's dive into some of the shenanigans that happened behind him. Because since then, on Wednesday, or was it Tuesday? Tuesday, that's right, it was on election night. NASCAR released the penalties, which talk about, garbage hour or whatever. There's a thing in politics of like releasing stuff you don't want anyone to find or see on Friday evenings. And this felt like that. Basically, NASCAR, after investigating what happened between the 24 William Byron, who was falling back, then eventually fell into the clutches of Austin Dillon and Ross Chastain, who rode side by side and didn't pass him, with their teams telling them that he was only 1 point to the good, and so basically not to pass him for their Team Chevy brethren, which involved all the key partner teams from Chevy, which is a big part of this. Remember, there's key partner teams, of which there's 3 for Chevy, which is Hendrick Motorsports, Richard Childress Racing, and Trackhouse. Mm-hmm. They obviously wanted a Chevy in the Championship 4, and this was the way to do it, and obviously it had been discussed. NASCAR did not like those discussions on the radio, of course, because it does feel a little bit like collusion, and there's so many ways to go down this path of what is right and what's not. What's that?
It was collusion.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was collusion. So they penalized the 1 team, the 3 team, and the 23 because on the flip side of this was Christopher Bell trying to get one more position late in the race. He was a lap down after having spun out and unable to recover from that. And the car ahead of him 1 lap down was Bubba Wallace, who's a Toyota teammate. Bubba went very slow the last couple of laps, potentially saying he had a tire going down or an issue within the car. And then Christopher Bell flung it off into turn 3, trying to get around the 23, missed the corner, gets in the marbles, of which there was tons because the super soft tire that Goodyear brought put down a ton of marbles and rubber above the racing surface. He hits the wall, he gets back in the throttle, rides the wall, and NASCAR deemed that to be a safety violation since the Hail Melon of 2022 with Ross Chastain is no longer allowed. That gets William Byron in. All those teams that were involved in that were penalized. Basically, their crew chiefs and spotters of each car were basically suspended for this coming weekend, which includes my spotter, Brandon McReynolds. So we've had to make a change there. And team executives were penalized as well. Do you have thoughts on this now that we're on Thursday, that we've seen it?
It was everything that I witnessed in the last 20 laps of that race, other than Ryan Blaney, was a disgrace.
Yeah. I didn't like it.
And I don't know. It's a product of the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's a product of the incentive structure. You know, it's almost like you have 2 completely opposite things happening here 2 weeks in a row. Homestead, we had the greatest example of why the playoff system is amazing and anything could happen. And just because you put together 30 great weeks but didn't show up on the right time or the right moment doesn't mean you deserve a championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the new NASCAR. And I loved it. It was fun. I was thrilled. One of the best races I've ever seen. And then literally the same scenario repeating itself in Martinsville, but at a totally different outcome. Now, you know, the Blaney part of it, we're overshadowing his drive, right? And so that deserves attention, and that on its own we would probably be having this conversation. But instead, it's like the other thing that can happen in this high pressure, winning you're in moment, you know, moments matter, Game 7 moments, all this stuff, is the race manipulation that happened on Sunday.
Yep.
I am not going to be denied what my eyes saw and what I know. So these drivers, Austin Dillon, Ross Chastain, these drivers, you have no idea how good these freaking drivers are. How much they train, how well they can drive their cars and make passes when they have a faster car. You have no idea what these guys are capable of. To watch them ride side by side behind a car that they're 4/10 faster than for 15 laps was a disgrace.
Yep.
This is not racing. And I don't blame them personally. Like, I know those guys personally. I don't blame them personally. I know the position there. I understand the position they were in. I've been in similar positions myself. That's why I feel like I can feel so strong about this. And it's just like, it's just sad. I don't, you know, the strings are being pulled by not even their teams. It's the manufacturer is pulling the strings there. And I don't know what the solution is, or, you know, getting rid of the playoffs is not the solution, because you still, you know, it's like you end up with a tight points battle and you're going to end up with the same thing. So, but I mean, Chevy didn't build a $300 million facility in Concord, North Carolina to go let these teams knock each other out of the playoffs and not have anybody in the Final Four.
Yep.
Like, they didn't organize all of their engineering under one roof, right? And maybe I'm not even calling Chevy out. It's like Toyota, Chevy, Ford. They didn't organize systematically over the last 5-6 years, organize all of their engineering under one roof They didn't lobby NASCAR to allow them to centralize all the wind tunnel data and centralize all of the tire data and basically all the data there is on these cars and simulation tools. They didn't do that over the last 5 or 6 years so that they could let the teams race independently of each other. The manufacturer's mission is to have all 4 cars of their own in the Final Four.
This has been a topic we've discussed on here many times, in that the manufacturers have continued to gain power over the racing series that started years ago with these tech centers, the centralization, as you put it, of data and information, the wind tunnel, and now with the next gen car, they really control almost everything. And therefore, these teams are at their behest. Like, they are the largest contributor at times to some of these teams, financially, long-term, data-wise, information, all those things. So they're really in a box with that. I think NASCAR did mention, and Alton Sawyer said there was no penalties for the manufacturers because there's no provision in the rule book, but they'll look at that afterwards. I know Denny Hamlin mentioned maybe you dock them manufacturer points because that manufacturer championship is something they all pay attention to. It's a slippery slope. They're the largest contributors financially to NASCAR outside the media rights holders. So how much can you hurt them? I think it is not in their best interest to have fans see this go down and have the same reaction that you and I had, which is disgust, right? I sat there on pit road. I'm watching all this go down. I'm a part of the broadcast. And I just sat there and I realized with 25 to go, there was 2 Chevys catching William Byron. I was like, well, they're not going to pass him. And then I saw that Bubba was ahead of Christopher Bell, and I said, oh, just watch. If that 23 slows down, and sure enough, he did, and you're just sitting there going, oh, my God. Like, really? Really? Mm-hmm. And
yep.
It just...
It's a tough dynamic.
It is.
It is a tough dynamic for NASCAR to handle because the manufacturers they are not competitors in this sport in the same way that the teams are. They're like financiers of the sport. They're guests in the sport, right? They're paying guests of the sport. And so they're sort of, and I want to say this because I think I agree with it. They need to be treated as such, right? They're sponsors. Maybe that's a better way to say this. They're sponsors of the sport. They're not exactly competitors of the sport, right? If they're here for one reason and one reason only, and that is to sell more cars to retail customers, right?
Yep.
Production vehicles. That's the only reason those manufacturers are here. If we, in these scenarios, treated them as equals as the race teams, right? With penalties and announcements and financial penalties and infractions and all that stuff, then at some point we would either fix the problem or the executive level of these manufacturers would be like, hey, why are we spending $200 million a year on this sport that is abusing us? Abusing our brand.
Yeah, no, I know.
That's a poor choice of words because I'm not trying to say that NASCAR is abusing them, but like that, at some level, the executive of General Motors would look at NASCAR and be like, okay, 3 times a year I have to get a report on the damage to my brand because of something that happened in NASCAR. Right? They will, as a result, cut back on their spend, their marketing investment. They're not, because it is a marketing tool. That's it. They're not.
Yep.
There's nothing else. There's no other reason that they're in NASCAR.
Yep.
So, but they're not the same as the teams. They can't be held accountable in the same way as the teams because they're a sponsor. It's just a different dynamic, right, wrong, or indifferent. And if you disagree with me, share it and tell me and let me know your perspective. If you're a NASCAR executive listening to this, a OEM executive listening to this, or a team executive, share it. Let me know what you think, because like I'm basing this off of my experience and my beliefs, and that's one of the tough balances here. And that also leads down so many other paths as to why, where NASCAR has to make decisions with rules and everything to try to get other manufacturers into the sport, but they also have to appease the ones that they have. I mean, if you're NASCAR, it is a difficult situation. But, NASCAR did, I think, what they needed to do with these penalties. They couldn't penalize William Byron, unfortunately. There's just not enough. I don't know. There's probably just not enough of evidence in this moment that Jeff Gordon himself was involved in, the making sure that the 3-car, whatever deal that was made, it was done beyond a firewall of cybersecurity that NASCAR has access to at the moment, right?
Yep.
But there was collusion there. That was a coordinated effort, whether it happened in the moment or it was planned the day before. There was clearly a coordinated effort to make sure that the 24 got what it needed to stay in the playoffs.
And how do you think about this? Well, think about this. How do you write that rule to stop this sort of stuff? Think about how complex this is. How do you write a rule? Well,
I don't think it's a rule. I think it's I don't think it's a rule. I think it's an incentive structure.
Well, because think about super speedways.
We've proven in so many things in life and government and racing, like you can't just legislate your way out of every mess.
Amen to that. Amen.
Right?
Amen.
You can't regulate your way out of every mess. Right? That's what creates track limits. That's what's all roads lead to track limits. Seriously, I'm serious.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm just saying.
If you don't share in my ideology, that's fine. But I'm just saying, I don't like. There's no rule that fixes this. It's just it's an incentive structure. It's something in the structure of the sport that allows these teams to end up working too closely together, and then you pair that with the playoff system, and winning you're in, and I don't know, and all of these things lead, to the teams are colluding and GM is in charge.
And it happens in almost every cutoff race in some capacity, whether it's a teammate choosing a different restart line to let the other teammate have a better restart, so on and so forth. This happens all the time, but this was the most stark example of it we've seen in a while.
What's funny about that is, and this is how hard it is this is how hard of a position the whole sport is in to fix something like this, is like what you just said is borderline appropriate, in my opinion. That's charming. That's racing. That's strategy. Right? Choosing lines and this and that and helping here and helping there. But, running a roadblock in the last 15 laps to help a boat anchor make it into the playoffs is not, right? How do you even fix that? I don't know.
But it's a very complex thing that we're not going to solve here on Money Lap right this second.
But I hope that we've opened your mind to, and by you I mean everybody listening. I hope that we've opened
our one listener.
Yeah, our listener's mind to what this problem really looks like, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, listener, let us know. Comment below. We appreciate it. If you're getting your feedback, we'll dive. I mean, I think it's an all-season discussion we can also have that's longer form. One of the things that did come out of this, as you mentioned at the beginning of your chat there, was, this shouldn't take down the playoff system, of which Brad Keselowski tweeted right after. This should be the last straw on the camel's back for the playoffs. I don't agree. To your point, I think the playoff system is really cool. It is unique. It is interesting. We've been down this a million times, and I know there's a lot of people out there that don't feel the same way as us. I just don't see how you see it that way. Even for us to have competed in it and been, knocked out or whatever, it's still very exciting. And I interviewed Kyle Larson, which didn't actually get aired, and I asked him about him not making it, being the winningest driver by double the amount of wins on the season, being the leading number one seed into the playoffs. And he goes, I could hate it, but it's exciting. And he literally had a smile on his face. He said it's exciting. And I was like, there's a guy that for everyone that hates it, here's a guy that just missed out on going for a championship, and he was smiling after Martinsville because he's like, it's exciting, it's cool, it's high pressure, and it's fun to watch, and it's fun to discuss. And so I think it's obviously here to stay, and this should not knock it down, but there's probably something that's going to come of this that potentially could help this whole collusion thing. Although I don't know, it may always exist, and we just have to deal with it. One other controversy that kind of got overlooked from all this at the end was this restart that happened midway through the race where Kyle Busch lost a wheel down in turn 3 and 4. It was obvious the wheel was bouncing around the track. NASCAR goes green, then immediately goes yellow. People had chose their positions, including Ryan Blaney, for the restart, thinking a restart actually comes to fruition. He lost positions because of that. And obviously by the rule book, that is a green flag than a yellow flag. It's a green flag that probably should have never came out. It continues a trend throughout these playoffs and in 2024 of suspect officiating that is just, continuing down this path of saying, look, there's got to be some major changes for all that's on the line in these playoffs. The officiating has to come up to the standard of what's happening on racetrack. And I think the thing I've kind of fallen to is like, you have a playoff system that creates randomness. You have a car that creates parity, which allows randomness. If with so much randomness built in tracks like Talladega and that sort of thing, the one thing that needs to be a constant is the officiating and the rules. And that has also this year added to the randomness of this whole thing, which I think is a problem. And that needs to be fixed in the offseason. I think it needs to be one of NASCAR's highest priorities is to really buckle down on what they want out of officiating, who's making the decisions, how they're interpreting the rule book. There have been many points just in the last 10 weeks where the rule book has been reinterpreted from what has been the precedent set for the last 20 years. And I can give you a couple examples off the top of my head. The Kansas playoff race for Xfinity. We were within 3 cars of completing the green flags pit cycle. There was a tire that got into the grass. For the last 20 years, and especially in the last probably 5 or 10, NASCAR would have let that complete the green flag cycle and then thrown a caution, which is everyone's okay with. That's fine. They threw the caution with 3 cars left in the green flag cycle, which locked us a lap down. It completely changed our race. There was playoffs implications on the line, championship implications, and it's just like that is a reinterpretation of the rule book. I'll give you another example. The 8 car at Miami in Cup was penalized for a safety violation for hitting his own crew member coming into the pits, into his box.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have not heard of that penalty being, given in the 20-plus years I've been watching NASCAR and the 15 years I've been racing in it. And I asked a lot of, big-time legends if they had heard of that. None of them did. It was a reinterpretation of the safety violation of the rule book. That has to stop. People have to, whoever's making decisions has to look at the last 20 years, go back and watch all these races, mark down the moments that these things can happen and say, this is the precedent set, this is how we'll operate. But a reinterpretation of the rule book, to me, has been one of the biggest issues of NASCAR in 2024, and they got to fix it. So,
I share in that. I think that a huge weight in that, to me, is attributed to just the increasing amount of rules. More legislation, more rules written means that more interpretation is needed on a regular basis, on a more consistent basis, and you're going to end up not getting it right.
You know what I think? I've seen Elton Sawyer more this year than my own girlfriend.
Not nearly as good looking?
No. He doesn't, no. I like Elton. Good guy. Just don't want to see him so much. Let's talk about the Championship 4 as we head into Phoenix. We've got Blaney, Reddick, Joey Logano, and William Byron all going for it. Who's your pick, Landon? My championship pick when we did our brackets was Denny Hamlin. He no longer has a chance to win the championship. So
Josh, who was my
pick?
pick
First.
Who did I
believe
pick?
your pick was Kyle Larson, but I can pull it up.
Well, that's too bad.
No, I think you were William Byron.
Oh, was he William Byron?
Well, I have called William Byron to be the champion early in the season.
Yes, you did.
But I don't think I've actually put him on my brackets to be the champion.
Yeah, he had Larson as his winner.
But I'm going to pick William Byron. I think that you could probably dig up one of our shows early in the season where we made a championship prediction. I think I picked William Byron. I think I picked him last year too.
I'm going Joey Logano because I'm actually covering him this weekend. We all get assigned a Championship 4 competitor on the last broadcast of the year for Pit Reporters. And I believe that every time I've had him, he won the championship. I know I was a part of his 2 championships. When back in Miami in 20, whatever that was, 18, whatever, I was covering him. And then at Phoenix in 22, I was covering him. So just going off some weird, I don't even know what to call that. Like anecdotal evidence. Joe Logano, you got this because I'll be in your pits. So I'm going to put it on my back, which is good for you, Josh.
Yeah, I'm running it to the bank, boys. Called it week 1, day 1. It's Logano's year, and He may have just made it in by 16 pounds missing from Alex Bowman's car, but you know what?
It's a hell of a story.
That's
What about Reddick, though? I mean, seriously. Imagine.
I know. Well, we didn't bring it up, but there was
doing NASCAR, and by today's Thursday the 7th. Tomorrow on the 8th, we're expected to hear a ruling from the judge on their lawsuit on whether they'll get the injunction to continue to race next year or not. And I would imagine no matter the outcome of the ruling, there'll probably be an appeal, and we'll probably quickly, within a few weeks or a month, who knows, we'll get the results of that. But I mean, in the middle of all of that, having that team win the championship, that would be quite a story.
It would be a very interesting offseason and quite the interesting championship trophy presentation.
Also, the first
on the stage
championship for Michael Jordan in a long time.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Just some things that were learned at the hearing that was earlier this week. That Bob Pockers tweeted this: Reddick and 2311 sponsors can leave if they run as an open team. So both he and the sponsors can leave. So that's part of their saying they need this injunction. The NASCAR attorney said nearly half of the broadcast revenue goes to the teams as part of the new charter agreement starting next year. So more information will continue to come out about that.
What about Xfinity and Truck Series?
What about it?
What about their champions?
Well, we were going to get into it. They're next.
Okay.
So Xfinity Series, the Martinsville race was, I thought, decent. The 20 car will be racing for an owner's championship of Eric Almirola. He's a master there. That guy's so good at Martinsville, dude. It's unbelievable. Almost wins his last cup race there. He finished second, I believe, to Blaney, but he went like super long on tires that last year and like was right there in his final season, and then comes into Xfinity and wins both this year, dominating fashion. He's just very fast at Martinsville. Really impressive. But who do we have in the championship for? We've got Cole Custer, Justin Allgaier, who I always say you've got to go through Allgaier to win the Xfinity Series championship. AJ Allmendinger and Austin Hill. We know AJ Allmendinger will not be coming back to Xfinity next year. He's going to Cup. Cole Custer is going to Cup. Allgaier announced he'll be back for 2 more years at Junior Motorsports, and Austin Hill will be returning RCR. So who you got there? Who's your pick?
I think it's between Custer and Allgaier.
Me too.
I think I'm going to go with Allgaier. I think my heart's going to go with Allgaier.
Yep.
I think Custer's going to be harder to beat, though.
I think Custer will be fastest of those 4.
I think it's Custer's race to lose.
It's his to lose, but I'm with you for some reason, and I don't know what it is. I think this is Justin's year. He gets it done, finally.
It's been quietly his year. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. All right, so we're all in the Justin Allgaier bandwagon, and I know Josh is going to say Justin Allgaier.
All I can say, I spoke to him last time he went into the Phoenix race, and he said or it was like 2 or 3 races before Phoenix. He said, "All I gotta do is make Phoenix. Phoenix is one of my best tracks," and that was the year that the 2 and the 21 got into each other, and then he was there. Didn't quite get it that year, but you know what? Come on. How do you not love the guy?
Well, I think we're all in agreement. It's his year. Go get it, Justin. It's time. It's finally yours. 15 plus years in the Xfinity Series may net a championship. Let's talk trucks. Christian Eckes moves Taylor Gray at the end of the race in a move he didn't have to make, but he dominated Martinsville, was on older tires, and didn't want to lose that race. They had a discussion afterwards. And I don't think it's a move that Eckes had to make in any respect. I don't think it was thinking big picture, because he now goes in the Championship 4 up against Grant Enfinger, Corey Heim, and Ty Majeski. I would say Eckes and Heim are going to be the fastest because they've obviously been the fastest. Corey Heim was just announced that he's returning to Tricon next year in the Truck Series for a 3rd year. Eckes is moving on to Xfinity Series with Colleague Racing next year. But I think this is Enfinger's championship with Jeff Stankiewicz on the pit box there, who's a good friend of mine. I've worked with for a while. Because I could just see Eckes having a little trouble with his ramifications from last week, and Heim, for whatever reason, not getting it done. Majeski there, closely, but I don't know if he'll have the speed. Enfinger, I think, just does kind of what he did, where he just grinds it out. It's his championship.
He's a grinder. I'm a big fan of Enfinger.
So who are you picking?
I think that's my. I think that's. I think I'll take it. I'll take Enfinger.
Who you got, Josh?
Look, he deserved it last year, and then some shenanigans at the end of the race took it away from him, and I think it's Enfinger. He was running away with the 2023 race, and sometimes the world has a way of handing it back to you in another way, shape, or form. So he may not be leading at the end of the race or close to the end of the race, but who knows? Shenanigans might occur with Ekis. And the next thing you know, Enfinger's your champ.
All right. So, wait, who did you pick? I got confused. I stopped listening.
and Enfinger. I just think he gets retribution for last year.
Well, this is the most boring picks ever because we all pick the same driver and every
Fine. I'll change it up. Heim's getting it. It's Heim time.
Thanks for listening to Money
on.
Lap and watching on YouTube. We appreciate you guys. We know you came here for some exciting discussion, and we're not going to give it to you. So there you go. We're all in agreement, which always makes scintillating television and shows on YouTube. If you have a pick, let us know in the comments below before the races happen. If it's afterwards, then, well, yeah, that doesn't count. But let us know what you think of our picks and if you agree or disagree. Let's talk F1 real quick. Wild race at Brazil this past weekend in the rain. But the craziest part for Verstappen, I mentioned earlier, a masterclass, 17th to a win in the rain. The mark of a great F1 driver is your ability in the rain. For whatever reason, it was the folklore around Senna, the folklore around Michael Schumacher. Sebastian Vettel was great in the rain. Lewis Hamilton's great in the rain. Max Verstappen's great in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
It's all it made.
You know, he's
something
had
about
a rough second half to this season, but those are good, fresh reminders that he is the GOAT.
He's the top dog. He's the top dog right now. With all this stuff swirling in the background, and obviously, as you mentioned, the speed deficit they've had as of late, you know, they call rain the great equalizer on a day where maybe the speed of your car isn't the most important factor. He just got it done. And
winning in the rain in Brazil
big.
is kind of symbolic to me, too, in F1.
Yeah. Alpine had a huge day. They got on the podium of both cars, and basically because of the point situation, what it did in the Constructors' Championship for them, it's been estimated that it was a potentially $50 million day for Alpine to go to get that. That's some serious cheese.
That's grown-up money.
Hey, $1 million here, $1 million there, and soon we're talking about real money. I did like seeing F1 in the rain, though. Cars spinning out and all that stuff. It's just so fun. So we'll see where the championship continues, but it does seem like, to me, that was maybe a fatal blow to Lando Norris's hopes to getting this Drivers' Championship. The Constructors' Championship still open there, but really this was the nail in the coffin of Verstappen getting another championship, or for Lando Norris to compete against him for another championship. No, wait a second. We had technical issues. We started late. Kyle, I know you're sitting right there. We don't have time. I have to catch a flight to Phoenix. I got to go do this final race in my full-time career, Landon.
So did we have to cut him loose?
We had to cut him. I just had to let him go. I can't believe it. It's really just. I appreciate him showing up every week this season and being there. We're gonna have, NASCAR's gonna have to work on their officiating. We're gonna have to work on our producing and timing because this has just gone too far to not have Kyle on once again. No time. That's it for us on the Money Lap. We appreciate you listening and watching. Let us know what you think in the comments below. We'll see you after Phoenix. Peace. Thanks for listening or watching. If you want to be heard on this show, go to moneylap.com to leave us a voicemail. Be funny, be irreverent, or be insightful, but don't be dumb. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us grow. And if you're listening, please leave us a 5-star review to be featured on this show. Follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We'll see you there.